listening to Your Secret is Safe with Me, non-judgmental talk about infidelity with Dr. Marie Murphy. If you're looking for new perspectives on complicated relationship issues, you've come to the right place.
Days go by, they're crawling by.
Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining me today. I'm Dr. Marie Murphy, and I'm a relationship coach who specializes in helping people who are engaging in some form of infidelity deal with their feelings, clarify what they want, and make decisions about what they're going to do. Most of us, or at least very many of us, want a romantic life we feel great about. And that usually seems like such a simple desire. But actually having the kind of romantic life that we want to have can seem really complicated. I help people simplify their seemingly complicated romantic situations so they can experience the love life they want to have. I offer confidential, non-judgmental coaching that is tailored to your specific needs. So if you want some help sorting out your love life, you can schedule an introductory coaching session with me through my website, mariemurphyphd.com. This episode is the second in a series of episodes focused on the experience of being the other person, meaning you are involved with someone who is ostensibly committed to someone else. And by being involved with you, the person you're involved with is cheating on someone. Today, we're going to focus on habitually being the other person. Some of us have a pattern of getting involved with people who aren't officially available. In other words, some of us have been the other person not once, not twice, but 3 or 4 or even more times. And this sort of a pattern is in some ways very different than a one-time situation where you find yourself involved with someone who's committed to someone else and you're trying to figure out what you want to do about that. As I talked about in the first episode on being the other person, which was released recently, being the other person tends to come with some unique challenges and frustrations and tends to come with the potential for particular kinds of heartbreak or heartache. And this can all be difficult or painful enough to contend with if you're in the midst of being the other person for the first time. But if you've been in the role of other person more than once and you're there right now again, it may seem like you're stuck in a never-ending soap opera in which you're always the one who ends up crying. So if getting involved with other people who are officially or ostensibly committed to someone else is a pattern for you, the first thing I want you to ask yourself is if this is something you want to change or not. Some people have a habit of getting involved with people who are already involved. And although they don't like everything about this pattern, they also kind of love some things about it. So I want to make it absolutely clear that it is an option for you to come to the conclusion that you want to continue being the other person. You could choose that. Plenty of people cheat on their partners and have decided that's okay with them. And you could decide that you're okay with participating in that dynamic. To quote Russell Brand, it's not a problem if it's not a problem. But most importantly, you got to recognize that you have a choice. If you do not want to continue the pattern of being the other person, it's probably time to take a good look at what you're getting out of getting involved with people who are already involved to someone else. You're getting something out of doing this if it's happening over and over again. So let's consider a few questions that might help you figure out what that might be. Is there a particular thrill for you in being with someone else's partner and doing something you aren't supposed to be doing? If that is the case for you, you certainly wouldn't be the first. For some of us, doing something naughty or doing something we aren't supposed to do can be really exciting and arousing. And finding excitement and arousal in doing naughty things or transgressive things isn't necessarily bad, but it's also important to recognize that sometimes this desire leads us to do things that don't really get us what we want in our relationships or in our lives as a whole. And if we're finding that our pursuit of naughtiness in relationships is doing things to our life and our relationships that we don't really like, it's important to know that we can find other ways of satisfying those desires. I talked about this recently with Melissa Haidt on the episode about sexuality, religion, and shame. So that should be just a few or several episodes back, and you can look that one up if you're interested in that. Another thing to consider is whether you might be getting involved with other people who are committed to someone else because you want a relationship that is low commitment and doesn't have too many strings attached. For some people, that's what's going on. And that is a legitimate preference. And you may have found that getting involved with married people is a functional way of fulfilling that preference. But there are other ways of filling that preference. There are other ways of fulfilling that preference too. And you might want to consider exploring those options. Yet another question to ask yourself is, are you seeking distraction in the form of relationship drama? I talked about this on another recent podcast episode, which was called Distraction, Drama, and Infidelity or something like that. And if you haven't listened to that one yet, you might want to. The basic point, though, is that we are all, to one degree or another, seeking relief from the various flavors of discomfort that are an inevitable and ongoing part of human life. And we do this in various ways. And one way that some people find highly effective is getting into high drama romantic relationships. And being the other person in an affair, or, being involved with someone who is having an affair with you, has the potential to be a pretty high drama situation. There are so many things going on. There are so many moving parts. There's your feelings. There's the other person's feelings. There are all of your questions about how to sneak around and see each other, and all of the questions about what it all means and what you want the future to be like. And then, of course, there's the wild ride of being an observer of their relationship, your person's relationship with their spouse or their partner, and wondering what they're going to do about that relationship. And all of this stuff can consume a lot of time and energy. And sometimes that is exactly the point. Sometimes all of this drama can be really intoxicating and compelling and can very effectively distract us from other things in our life that really might be better recipients of our attention and affection, perhaps. Yet another thing you might want to consider you could be getting from your pattern of getting involved with people who are committed to other people is this: you may be confirming your beliefs about what is true for you or what is possible for you in your romantic life. This is especially important to consider if you don't think you're getting any benefits from repeatedly getting involved with people who are committed to other people. If the pattern seems like a tragic curse that you can't shake, it's time to ask yourself what you believe is possible for you to experience in love and relationships. So, some of us think we want something, but don't really believe that it's available to us. And of course, the prime example here is some of us think we want to be in a long-term committed relationship, maybe a long-term committed and monogamous relationship, but maybe we also suspect that we aren't really worthy of love. Or maybe we think that our relationships never work out. Or maybe we think that there aren't any good people out there. Maybe we think that we're flawed in fundamental ways. Maybe we think that no one will ever really want to commit to us. Maybe we think that we always fall for the wrong people. And even if a relationship starts off great, sooner or later, a fatal flaw reveals itself. There are many flavors or variations of these kinds of beliefs. And if we keep getting involved with people who aren't fully available, that pattern may confirm what we believe to be true about ourselves and our romantic prospects. We may not want to believe that we can't find a good relationship, or we may not want to believe that all of our relationships won't last. But not wanting to believe those things is not the same thing as actually not believing them. I'll say that again. Not wanting to believe that we can't find a good relationship is not the same thing as not believing that it's true that we can't find a good relationship. Many of us are carrying around limiting beliefs that really get in the way of experiencing what we want to in life. And this is a problem because we tend to derive satisfaction from finding evidence that confirms what we already believe to be true, even if it's something we don't want to be true. So if I believe that I'm unlovable and I never have successful relationships, and when I meet someone great, it never works out for long, I may feel sad about this. And I may profess that I don't want this to be the case. But if I've been telling myself this story long enough, there may be a lot of comfort in the familiarity of the narrative. And I may keep telling it to myself because it's familiar and comfortable and known to me. I may continue to believe that this is just what's true for me. This is how my life is. This is how I am. I may believe that I can never find someone who truly wants to be with me. And that belief may become a big feature of my sense of, like what my love life is like, has been like, and can be like. Most of us want to have a clear sense of who we are. Most of us want to hang on to our stories about ourselves, even when they don't serve us, and even when they're not getting us what we think we want in our lives. And it's weird. It seems counterintuitive, but it happens all the time. And the thing is, it's usually really hard to see this when it's happening because we tend to think that our narratives about ourselves and our lives and who we are and what our relationships are like are just neutral reflections of the truth, but they are not. Our narratives are acts of creation. When we believe that things are a certain way, when we tell ourselves that we are a certain way and that certain things are possible for us and certain things are not possible for us, we behave accordingly. When we think things are true, they become true for us. And our beliefs shape our actions, and our actions then create the reality of our lives, including our romantic relationships. And weirdly enough, we often want to be right about ourselves more than we want to be happy. We tend to seek out experiences that give us evidence that our beliefs about ourselves are correct. This may sound absurd, but again, it happens all the time. And when we have strong beliefs that we aren't even aware of, all sorts of strange things can happen. This is how we get ourselves into patterns that seem like fate, but are actually created through our own actions. So, for instance, if you have a pattern of getting involved with people who are committed to other people, it might be a good time to dig deep and ask yourself what story about your own romantic possibilities you've been telling yourself and how you've been confirming it by repeatedly taking on the role of the other person. If you're good at examining your beliefs about yourself and the impact they have on your life experiences, this guidance alone may be quite helpful. But this is also the kind of thing where it can be really helpful to have someone who can help you dig around in your mind and see where you're telling yourself stories that are totally running the show without you realizing it. This is one of the great benefits that working with a coach can provide. A coach can help you see how you are creating or contributing to the situations in your life that you think are just happening to you. The coach can help you see where you have the power to make changes, where you haven't seen that you've had the power to make changes. And of course, this is exactly what I do with my clients, or part of what I do with my clients. And I can help you with this too. Whenever there's a pattern in our relationships or in any aspect of our lives that we don't like, many of us default to the notion that we don't really have the power to change the situation or address the pattern. The idea that things in our life just happen to us is pretty common. And of course, some things do just happen to us. There are plenty of things in our lives that are truly outside of our control. But a lot of the time, we don't fully recognize or make use of the power that we do have. So for instance, there's a pretty prevalent idea out there that if we meet someone we think is great or someone we love and who loves us, that relationship is meant to be, or it's supposed to happen. We tend to think that love or attraction or desire is a force that compels us to do things like, for example, stay in a relationship with someone, even if there are aspects of the relationship we really don't like. But what if love isn't a force that compels us to do anything? What if it's a feeling we can feel and then actively choose how we want to respond to or act upon? Another example. Sometimes we think that we just fall for particular people or particular types of people, and that there's nothing we can do about that. But what if that's not really the case? What if it's possible to get more clear on what it is exactly we've found so compelling about the people we've fallen for in the past, and identify the choices we've made in past relationships so that we can start to make different choices going forward if we want to. Yeah, we may have a particular long-running preference for a certain set of characteristics. Maybe that's been the case so far, but guess what? That set of preferences could be changed if you wanted to, or the way that you act on those preferences can always be changed. Yet another thing that sometimes happens when we repeatedly experience something we don't like is we look for explanations from our past for why we are having the experiences we're having now. So if you're in a pattern of being the other person, sometimes people say to me that, they're in this pattern because they grew up witnessing their parents' relationship patterns being a certain way. And because of seeing that, they are the way they are. Sometimes people say that because they were exposed to whatever they were exposed to growing up, it's really hard for them to be different from the way they currently are. Or maybe it's even impossible for them to be different from the way they currently are. And on the one hand, I completely understand the tendency to do this. There are so many messages out there in the cultural fog, so to speak, and within the self-help literature and the relationship advice industrial complex that tell us that past is prologue and that our early experiences make us who we are and so on and so on. And of course, I'm not denying that our history isn't important. I'm not suggesting that what you've experienced in your life doesn't matter. But the thing about the past is we experience it by thinking about it in the present. I'll say that again. The way we experience the past is by thinking about it in the present. In other words, we continuously decide what we make the past mean whenever we think about it. And we may do this very consciously or deliberately, or we may do it very unconsciously or unintentionally. And, again, let me tell you, I used to spend a lot of time and energy thinking about what went wrong or what I believed went wrong in my own past and telling myself what that meant for my present experience of living and for my future. I totally believe that the past determined the scope of future possibilities in very unfair, but also non-negotiable ways. So I completely understand the inclination to mine the past for explanations of anything or everything. Situating ourselves within the coherent narrative of who we are and why we are the way we are can be very seductive. The only problem is devoting our energy to doing that detracts from our ability to actually make changes in ourselves and our lives at the only point in time in which we ever have any real power, which is the present. No matter what your story of what's possible for you romantically has been up to this point, you can start to change it now. No matter what you've believed is true because of your past up to this point, you can start to shift those beliefs. More than one thing can be true about whatever you've experienced. And if you want to open yourself up to new possibilities in your life, you've got to first believe that new things are possible for you. And for a lot of us, starts with choosing to believe on purpose that our past does not have to determine our future. It starts with deciding to believe that changing our patterns is possible, even if we don't know exactly how to do that yet, or exactly how it's all going to happen. And again, here's another shameless plug, if you will, for my coaching services or, coaching in general. I had no idea how to expand my sense of future possibilities until I discovered coaching and I started getting coached. Cultivating a set of beliefs about what is possible for you in your future that are different from the beliefs you've had about yourself for your whole life to this point is a skill set. It's not something that comes automatically or naturally to many of us. It's not something that many of us know how to do without being taught or are good at without being coached. And I can help you with this. So if you want to make some shifts in your romantic life and don't know how, go to my website to learn more about how we can work together. Okay, one last question to ask yourself if you are in a pattern of being the other person. Do you know what you truly want out of your romantic relationship or relationships? Sometimes we just don't really know what we want. other than that we're looking for connection and intimacy and care and touch and love and sex and attention and affection and all of the things. And although wanting those things is a pretty good starting point, there are a lot of people out there who can give you some of that, or maybe even a lot of that, but with a lot of extra stuff thrown in that you don't really want to deal with. If you aren't clear on what you want, it's hard to get clear on what you don't want. And when you aren't clear on that, it's really hard to set clear boundaries for yourself. Getting clear on what you want is important in every area of your life, not just in your romantic relationships. And here's the thing, we have to decide what we want deliberately on purpose. And doing this is an active process. It's not just a matter of letting your preferences come to you as if by magic without any consideration on your part. So here's how this plays out. For example, sometimes people say to me that they don't actively pursue opportunities to be the other person. They're not actively pursuing people who are married or committed, but married people tend to take an interest in them. And that's the reason why they've habitually ended up being the other person. Now, here's the thing. People cheat on their partners. It happens a lot for all kinds of reasons. And I'm pretty sure it will continue to happen. So there's no point in saying things like, well, people who are in committed relationships shouldn't flirt with other people, or shouldn't seek out other people, or shouldn't start up relationships with other people, or shouldn't have affairs. These things are going to happen. The question is, are you available to participate in that stuff or not? That's up to you. And if you haven't made a really clear decision about whether or not you're willing to get involved with people who are committed to other people or not, you may keep doing it. When we make clear decisions about what we are willing to do or not do, and what we're willing to participate in and not participate in, we're able to change our patterns a lot more effectively than we are if we aren't clear about what's okay for us and what isn't. So it's time to get clear on what you're available for and what you aren't. And this is true for everything. And it's so liberating. When we decide, I'm just not going to do that anymore, it clears out so much clutter from our existence and enables us to step into the lives, whether it's our romantic lives or our work lives or our, family relationships or whatever, that we truly want to be living. Sometimes we have to give something up in order to get what's really meant for us. Okay, everyone, we've covered a lot of ground here, and I just want to wrap up by emphasizing that no matter what patterns you've seemingly been stuck in your love life, it's possible to change them. It may require a totally new approach. It may require to do things you haven't done before, but change is possible. And believing that change is possible for you is a great first step forward. Thanks for tuning in. If you want my help making changes in your romantic life, you can schedule an introductory coaching session with me through my website, mariemurphyphd.com. And of course, if you like what you've heard today, I hope you'll head on over to iTunes to rate and review the show. Until next time, bye for now.
Thanks for listening to Your Secret is Safe with Me with Dr. Marie Murphy. Make sure to click subscribe to get updates on our latest episodes.